The following is a local resident producers program. The program content is the sole responsibility of the producer and does not necessarily reflect the views or policies of CATV2, Oshkosh Community Access Television, the City of Oshkosh, the Oshkosh Cable Television Advisory Commission, or Time Warner Cable.
Welcome to Eye on Oshkosh. I'm Tony Palmeri, pinch hitting for Cheryl Hentz today. And the reason why I'm sitting in for Cheryl is because, as you know, she is running for the Oshkosh Common Council, and on programs where we interview Common Council candidates, Cheryl does not participate in those interviews. And I'm really pleased today to have two candidates with me, Joe Youngworth, who's running for council for the second time, and Bryan Bain, who's running for the first time. Both Joe and Bryan, as you know, made it through that tough primary of 14 candidates, and so they are in that group of 6 that you'll see their names on the April 5th ballot. I need to point out, in the interest of full disclosure, that before the primary I did contribute some money, $50 to be exact, to Citizens for Responsible Government, which was a group that did put out an ad that supported Joe Youngworth's campaign along with other candidates, but I am not working in Joe's campaign. So thank you both for being here.
Thank you,
Appreciate
Tony.
it very much.
Thank you.
Why don't I start off by asking you both to talk about we'll start with you, Bryan.
Okay.
What is it in your experience that you think most qualifies you to be on the Oshkosh Common Council?
Sure. Thank you, Tony, and thank you for people watching at home. I believe that my experience in working with different nonprofit and city government types of opportunities best prepare me to run for city council. I've always had a passion about public service, and I feel that a part of that passion and a part of that responsibility is to be very prepared, and I've tried to watch and attend all of the council meetings the past 2 years and have really tried to make an effort to be involved and engaged in this community.
Joe, what is there in your experience that you think most qualifies you to be on the council?
Well, I'm an average guy. My father, as you may or may not know, was on the council for 10 years, and that's how I got my jump start too. I started attending the council meetings and getting involved and just listening to the people in the city of Oshkosh. I work for a beer distributing company here in town, and I am outside. I am out with the public, talking to the public, and I just think that in that I know what the majority of the people in the city of Oshkosh want and need, and I think I could represent them on the city council.
What do you think is and I'm going to ask you the same thing, Bryan, what do you think is the most crucial issue facing this city right now?
Well, I think it all really boils down to the budget. I mean, and of course, you know, the line items and the public pool closing, the development in the city is something that these people, I think the citizens want to know what exactly is going on. And I think it's their responsibility also to try to find that information. Mm-hmm. But I think it's the city council and a city council member's duty to inform these people also. But I think the big issue is the spending and the budget.
Bryan?
I think one of the major issues is probably what are we going to do as we move forward in the community? How are we going to make investments in the future of the city of Oshkosh? How will we write the next great chapter in our city's history? And I think that the budget plays into that. I think economic development plays into that. Some other issues and looking at our aging housing stock and conditions. You know, we've talked about roads and different projects that we'd like to see done and developments. But I think that, you know, what are we going to do to write this next great chapter for the city of Oshkosh?
Let's talk about a couple of controversial issues. As you both know, we're taping on March 17th, and recently a assistant attorney general in Madison came out with an opinion that a bid waiver for the restrooms in the amphitheater was illegal, that the city essentially broke the law on competitive bidding. Now, Bryan, I believe at the time the council was deciding on that no bid waiver, you actually spoke to the council, did you not?
I did.
And supported waiving the bid.
In this particular incident, yes.
Do you think now that that was a mistake?
I think with the information that was provided by Community Development Director Jackson Kinney and the rationale for the environmental concerns, the issues surrounding the makeup of the actual amphitheater and trying to have some consistency in that process, and then being able to have an opportunity to open the amphitheater at an earlier date to be able to bring in more revenue at an earlier rate or an earlier time. But you know, from my understanding of it, in my conversations with people, the environmental piece was significant in that. Had we brought in someone different, we would have, C.R. Meyer, the current contractor, would have had to cover all of the environmental contaminated land up, and then someone else would have had to come in and open that up again, and I think that would have possibly opened up the city to some
So
issues.
it sounds like even though we've got this opinion from Madison now, it sounds like you still think that the bid waiving was appropriate.
Well, I think it's important to point out that the Assistant Attorney General wrote this opinion based off of one citizen's information that was provided and did not contact the city for any information until after the opinion was written.
Is that your understanding?
Well, that's what I've been hearing that and things like that, but this is a perfect example of why you don't waive bids. Right here, it's unfortunate, and you know, Warren Kraft thought that, and we haven't heard his side of the story per se. You know, he's had a few quotes in the paper. I think we've got to kind of sit back and wait and find out all the information of all this and get it together. Something's going to come out of this. We're going to find that out probably in the near future. But it's all. This is the one thing that that irks me a little bit is that it's to hurry up and get this thing going. Move it up. Move it.
In the last year, the council has waived bids at least 2 or 3 or 4 times that I can think of. As a general rule, do you both think that that's okay, or should the city just get out of the practice of waiving bids?
I think they should just get out of the practice of waiving bids. I really do. I mean, we can sit back and find an excuse to waive any bid. I mean, you know, whether it be this, and I do understand that with the contaminated land, the remediation, the cap, and all that is fine and dandy. But C.R. Meyer is not the only building contractor that is capable of doing this, and with the plans, they can. Another contractor could have done the job, I feel.
What do you think, Brian?
I don't think it should be standard practice by any means for the city to waive bids. But if you look at another issue that was a safety issue, when the firefighters, I believe the chief was up and talking about the exhaust systems and the standardized ambulances. When I talked to the firefighters, they conveyed to me the message that in split-second emergency decisions, it's very critical for them to have the equipment in the same spot in every ambulance, and they don't have to worry about, am I at station 15, 16, 17, where am I at, and what equipment do I have with me at this point, and where do I find it? So there are some instances where it may be appropriate, but it's standard practice. We need to have the bid process.
Let's talk about another issue. You both know recently the Common Council voted to hand over management of the amphitheater to the PMI Incorporated that runs the Resch Center out of Green Bay. Now, I don't know if either of you saw the proposals or not, but the issue seemed to be whether you go with PMI out of Green Bay, national reputation, or do you go with PMI, or excuse me, Supley Hopper, local. What was your view as the council went through this? I'll start with you.
When I read the PMI bid, I was thoroughly impressed, as I think everyone was. And then I read the Supley bid, and I was equally impressed with that process. I struggled the whole entire meeting during that. I attended where they actually, after they laid it over and brought it back up again, and I struggled with how I would vote in that situation. I think both companies brought forth excellent plans. If I were on the council at the time, I probably would have voted for the Supley proposal over the PMI proposal.
Just out of sheer local?
No, I think that has a flair to it as well, but I liked the specific information that they gave regarding working with Waterfest and JC's Brews and Blues and things like that, that I felt like we might have a better success of those projects.
Joe?
Yeah, I too would have voted for the Supley Hopper group, and I too was I mean, I was torn, and we did get both proposals, and both proposals were top notch. They really were. I'm going for more of the local flavor. I don't believe we're gonna have these top 10, 20 bands bringing in here.
Even PMI admitted that.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. But I think the Supley Hopper group and PMI both very capable of running that. I would have voted for Supley Hopper, and you know, they didn't get it, of course, but at least they got an opportunity for the council members to see their proposal.
Yeah, and I agree. I think it's important now. We need to make sure we move forward with PMI and make sure we work with
Absolutely.
the local groups to make sure we
Support
have
them
that.
100%.
Mr. Tom, I guess it's Doig, he's the president of Five Rivers LLC. That's the group that wants to bring the condominium resort to the Fox River. He told the Convention and Visitors Bureau that there's a 90% plus chance of this happening. Do you support this project?
Well, it's tough to support a project that you haven't seen much of anything about it. I am in favor of doing this if it all makes sense. Now, I don't mean that if I think the city, the taxpayers are going to have to pony up some money for this. How much is reasonable? I don't know. We've got to see the whole outline of this project. I am definitely in favor of looking at their proposal and bringing something like that to the city of Oshkosh instead of seeing our people in this community go elsewhere.
Do you think we could fill 120 unit condominiums?
Oh, I don't know if that's exactly what it is. It's a 120 unit condominiums with 322 keys or something like that. It's not going to be just that. People are going to come in here, and to my understanding, and rent these out for the weekend. People are going to be able to stay a week if they'd like. It's not going to be people living there per se.
So for you, the issue is how much do they want from the city? So so the one figure we had thrown out at one point, now they've taken it back, but it was $7 million.
Sure.
Would that be reasonable?
Well, I mean, it's not out of pocket, but no, I don't want to spend $7 million down there, but we've got to understand it's not $7 million out of our pocket. It's not $7 million bucks, here it's on the table, go build it. It's through infrastructure and through the TIF district.
What's your view on the Five Rivers Resort?
Well, I think, like Joe said, there are too many hypotheticals out there right now with the project. I do favor and support someone wanting to make an investment such as this along our riverfront and in our community. I think it's an excellent opportunity to spawn a lot more development. And as Joe pointed out, it's not going to just be a condo. The condo is really the front to kind of finance it. It's the vehicle to finance this. It will run as a hotel. There's talks about a marina, restaurants, bars, maybe a water park, etc. I think this is an excellent opportunity for the city of Oshkosh.
Maybe one of you can explain this to me. We just had Mr. Ganther, who said that one of the reasons why his 100 block complex is not filled is because of an overbuilt apartment market in the city. So why would we, which I think some of us have been saying for years, why then would we choose that moment to build condo units when we can't even fill up the apartments on the 100 block?
Well, I think you have to look at the difference between an apartment and a condo. An apartment building, you're paying rent and you're not getting anything out of that. A condo, you're actually purchasing that and you're living there. And in this type of situation, they have an opportunity to actually earn income from that by having that rented out as a hotel room. So I think it's really apples to oranges.
So is it enough that if a developer says to us, I'm going to have this at 90% occupancy in 2 or 3 years, is that enough? If Mr. Doig says, don't worry, 90% occupancy.
Well, no.
You know he's going to say that.
Well, yeah. Well, I don't know if he's going to say that, but that's not going to fly with me. You've got to give us more. You've got to give the city more than just coming in and throwing a number at me. But like Bryan said, too, this is an investment for these people that are going to be buying these condos. And I believe the water park, for me, the water park is going to have to go in there, I believe, to make this thing go.
Because haven't they been talking about taking out the water park lately?
Yeah, well, and what I read in the paper was that might be one of the items that get delayed because of some financing, and I support that as well. I think we need to have a water park in this project. I think it would be an excellent opportunity for the community, and I think too, in addition to that, we need to be able to have access. This will be an excellent opportunity to provide more of a river walk and activities along that river walk.
Okay, I'd like you both to talk about your view of the city manager's performance. Now, I like Mr. Wolank. He's a great guy. But he was quoted in the paper saying, and I think it was in relation to this Five Rivers deal, he said, what things will be ahead for the city? I have not been involved in that discussion. Is that acceptable? That we have a city manager that's not involved in a massive discussion like that?
I think it's troublesome. I guess I'd have to speak to Mr. Wolank myself to figure out, what he actually meant by that. Hopefully it's not that he didn't have any knowledge of the Five Rivers Resort. I'd hate to think that I've had some knowledge before he did. And, you know, I have not been able to, of course, work closely with Dick Wallink. I have spoke to him numerous amount of times in the last 2 years for my bid for council. He's always been very forthright and honest to me. And, you know, I guess I'd have to really work side by side with him as a council member before I can go out there and start grading his performance.
You think we're getting enough leadership out of that office?
I think we need to see a little bit more of a proactive or positive messages coming out of there. I feel like whenever that the city manager or the city responds to something, it's typically on the defensive or after someone else has brought it up. And I would like to see the city, for instance, the Downtown Action Plan. We just read some information in the Northwestern about that, the 5-year anniversary of that. I would like to see something come out of the city telling us in the community what's been going on, what are the successes, what hasn't gone as well, what have been some of the surprises along the way, etc. But I do think that this is an excellent opportunity for the city manager and whomever is the new mayor to work side by side and really go out there and do some joint press releases or joint press conferences so that we can show that we have a council support for something and an administrative support for something.
And I go along with that too. But I think where we can do a little work is at these council meetings. I'd like to see a different structure on at the council meeting where there is more discussion between the council members themselves on things like this and Mr. Wallink to maybe bring up some of this stuff at the council meeting. There are a lot of people that watch these council meetings at home. This Channel 10 has just done unbelievable work with that. People do watch it there. I'd like to see more people come to the meeting, but if there was more information at these meetings, I think the citizens would be happy with that.
And maybe what we could do is even look at something at the end for whatever is good for the city or
That's
pertinent,
right.
etc. That could be something more of updates on major projects
Absolutely.
or just tidbits on the city.
Let me throw out a perception that I'm hearing about both of you, and a different perception about both of you, and give you a chance to respond. Joe, what I'm hearing people say about you is that you're Bob Youngworth's son.
Sure.
You're a blue-collar guy. And on the current council, Paul Esslinger and Brian Peschel have tapped into blue-collar working class. They voted no a lot. And the perception I'm hearing is that if you get Joe Youngworth on there, he's just another no vote. I'm hearing almost the exact opposite about Bryan Bain, that you have a very articulate message about progress and development, and lots of folks are interpreting that as you're going to be an automatic yes vote on development projects. So you're automatically no, and you're automatically yes. How do you both respond to that? How can you assure people out there that you are an independent person that is not in any automatic camp?
Sure.
Either one, if you want to start.
Sure, yeah. I think you could look at my record on the Plan Commission. There have been times where I have challenged what the city has brought forward in their report. There have been times when I voted against. I've been on the losing side of votes, if you will, in the Plan Commission.
Can you give us one good example of that?
I believe, let's see, there was an issue regarding the something to do with the aviation area and what we were looking at with the county and how we wanted to go in to negotiate some information with the county in terms of zoning and whatnot. I felt one way and the rest of the Plan Commission felt another, and that's okay. But the reality is that I think that if you talk to anyone who knows me personally and has watched my experience and understood my involvement in different activities throughout the community and in work, is that I do question things. I am a strong questioner, and I have no problem saying no or yes to an issue that may be for or against the administration, if you will.
Joe, you're not just a no vote?
No, absolutely not. We have been linked. I've heard that also out there that you're going along with Brian, you're going along with Paul. I am my own person. I do agree with a lot of things Paul and Brian have done, and I've disagreed with a lot of things that they've done. Some of the votes with the liquor license last year. I believe Paul wanted it to go to one restaurant at that time. I thought it should have gone back to the person that had it in the first place. I talk to people. I let them know. I will give them my honest answer to their question, and that's where it's got to start.
Well, my experience with political candidates has been that they're either very upset about something, and that's why they're running for office, or they're ambitious. they want to serve. Where do both of you fit in that? Like, I get the sense, for example, that you were very upset about that 5% tax increase.
Yeah, I wasn't. I mean, I didn't think it was appropriate.
Would you have voted for it on the council?
No, I would not.
All right, then what would you have cut?
Well, we've got to look. I'm in favor of looking at our healthcare costs and trying to maybe partner up with surrounding areas, communities. We've got to look at everything from top to bottom.
Right.
You know, nothing can be left out. Everything is cuttable.
Are you upset about something?
I'm very passionate about serving. In all honesty, as a young person living in this community, I feel like I have an opportunity to provide a vision and work with others to help create something, and that is why I'm running. I'm very passionate about and committed to this community. I'm young. I do have to say, I have to wish my wife a happy anniversary. Today's our anniversary. So, but you know, as a newly married couple looking to establish themselves and raise their kids here, and this is something that I want to be a part of this community to really improve it, to make it something that we're all very proud of.
Did you think the 5% tax increase was reasonable?
I don't know that percentage per se is reasonable or not reasonable. I think we need to look at what we're offering. And you know, if you look at the budget, we have a very lean budget. And you look at where we're spending, you know, with healthcare, we've entered into some different agreements. We've asked city employees to pick up more share of their costs. Shared revenue is going down. Utilities are going up, healthcare is going up. We have to make some investments so that we can offset and maybe not have as high of a tax increase.
What do you both feel about the progress or the rate of progress downtown? It seems like these candidates are being divided up between those who say slow down and those who believe either the rate has been okay or we should go even faster. Where do you stand on that continuum?
I think we've been doing a great job in our Central City area, as brought up last night in the debate. I think it's also we need to look at other areas in the community as well. But in the downtown Central City area, businesses are not leaving in droves. Businesses are thriving. We have young entrepreneurs wanting to make lifetime investments in our downtown. And I think that's something that we should support. And the art walks, go down there on a Saturday, first Saturday of the month, and you see all of the people who are very excited about what's going on in the community. And I think this is adding a little bit of a buzz and an oomph in our step.
Joe, too fast?
I don't know as if it's too fast. I think we're spending too much, maybe too fast. We've spent a lot of money down there right now, and as I did say last night at the League of Women Voters debate, I would like to see some money be spent in other areas. I don't know what those areas are, but the city of Oshkosh has more than just Main Street. And I'm for making Main Street beautiful. I've got a brother who owns a business down there, and I mean, in the 200 block. I mean, Main Street helps him. You know, it'll help everyone. But I just think we're spending a lot of money. I'm not for just shutting the tap off on it, but I think we should maybe bring it in and take a look at other things.
The city. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, but I don't know. I mean, if you look at it, if the figures are correct from what was in the report of the 5-year downtown action plan report, you know, approximately I think it was $58 million that was spent in downtown. $30 million was in private money. And I think that's an excellent example of that partnership that can occur, and we have to be a partner in that process.
Well, and part of that, we create lots of tax incremental finance districts. And a controversial issue, the 100 block is in a TIF, and we found out that the developer was late on his taxes, and that the project really has, I mean, everybody wants it to succeed now. It's there, you want it to succeed. But the fact is, it's 3 to 4 years old now. It's at 70% occupancy. He said there'd be retail at the bottom. It's still not there. Isn't it reasonable to conclude, Joe, that this was maybe not the best use of a TIF?
I mean, I think it can be perceived as that. I guess I'm not willing to just shut the tap off on Mr. Ganther on that. I think if I've been late on some bills before in my life, and I think we've got to. I think it's there. We've got to be supportive. I'd like to see the downstairs there, the lower level be occupied.
Right. I think we all want it to work at this point. But Bryan, don't you think the city council needs to be a little bit more critical on these TIF districts?
I think
before we approve them, you say you're going to do your homework and ask tough questions. Would the TIF be involved in that? Yeah,
and I think you're asking somebody to look in a crystal ball and say that a project's going to go well. No developer is going to come into any town, and say, my project's probably not going to take off right away. no investment's going to be made there. Of course, you have to have high hopes and expectations, and sometimes they don't go as fast or as according to plan. And you need to make sure that you're following up on that. That's, again, goes back to the message and the information from city staff. I'd like to be able to have reports on that. I think that we should have a yearly report on all of our TIFs, where the values have gone in that TIF, and any jobs that have been created in that area, so that we can get an update.
Yep,
The thing with the TIFs, and that is a tool that we get to use, that we have to bring in developers to come in and do things like this.
Right.
I feel that we may be jumping the gun on the TIFs. And just right away they come in and we throw all our cards on the table and say, here's a TIF, it's yours, let's do it. I think we maybe need to pull that back a little bit and negotiate with these people and maybe utilize them in a better fashion.
If I can, I'm sorry.
Sure.
I would disagree just slightly on that. I mean, you look at other projects like the Pioneer, that there's no TIF involved there. So I think that, we're not just giving away a TIF every time. I do think that, if you use the but-for test, would this occur but for the TIF?
And see, I don't think we use that test effectively. That's just been my observation.
And that's what I would employ.
I think we have 19 TIFs.
Yeah.
I have a listing of them at home. That's a lot of TIFs, and I know we've got a certain level that we can have.
All right.
That we're
different topic. Do either of you plan to have town hall type meetings if you get elected?
Absolutely. I propose Fifth Tuesday forums every month, that there's a Fifth Tuesday. We travel to a different area in the community. I invite other council members to that area, and that's their opportunity to discuss with us what are the issues in that neighborhood. Also spawning off an idea that was brought up by a citizen at a forum, the neighborhood councils, hopefully a compromise to the aldermanic form of government that some in the community feel that we have, because there are issues that are unique to different parts of the community or areas or neighborhoods, and if we can energize people within those communities to get involved and feed that information to us, whether it's in an open forum or through emails and phone calls, we can really involve them more in the process.
Town hall meetings?
Absolutely. I've heard you bring that Fifth Tuesday. That is a great idea. It really is, and I think that will be maybe the catapult to have other things and have citizens having their own get-togethers in their own meetings with the neighborhoods and things like that. So I would support that.
All right, we got time for some closing statements. Brian, why don't you start off? Look into camera 3. Tell people why they should vote for Bryan Bain on April 5th.
Thank you. As Tony said, my name is Bryan Bain, and it would be an honor for me to serve on your Oshkosh Common Council. I will work hard. I will ask the tough questions. I will actively involve you in this process. I am very committed to this community, and it would be an honor for me to serve. I will make responsible use of your tax dollars, and I will work for open, accessible government and plan development. If you'd like to know more about me, please go to my website at www.bryanbain.com. Thank you very much, and please vote Bain for council on April 5th.
Thank you. Joe Youngworth, look into camera 1. Tell our audience why they should vote for you on April 5th.
Well, I am a lifelong resident of Oshkosh, and I would like to bring a common sense approach to politics here in town. I am your average guy that will be looking out for the interest of the people. I will listen to the people of this city and take your questions and concerns and give you answers to them in a timely fashion. I will do everything in my power to make sure that you are represented in this city. Please vote for Joe Youngworth on April 5th.
All right, I want to thank Joe Youngworth and Bryan Bain for being here. We really are so fortunate to have some really quality young people running for office in this city. I think that we've got some great crop of candidates, and I hope everyone does go out and vote on April 5th. If you want to know more about the candidates, go to oshkoshnews.org. You can go to my site, tonypalmeri.com. We've got links to other information. The Oshkosh Northwestern on their site has info. So please get informed and please get out and vote on April 5th. For Brian and Joe, I'm Tony Palmeri, hoping you'll join me again next time for another edition of Eye on Oshkosh. Take care. Thanks.
Just escape.
I escaped.
I escape.
By foot.
And run across the border.
I couldn't practice my religion.
I was put to work in forced labor camps.
If I stay in Cambodia, I would have been dead by now.
If you think differently, then you're an enemy.
If you know how to read and write, you're dead. You speak your mind, you're dead.
The only way to express what I wanted to do was to get out.
I got to the country when I was about 14 years old.
I was 20.
I was 24.
I came here with nothing. No money, no English.
America stood for freedom, it stands for freedom, and that's what all my generation, young generation, wanted to be there.
For the first time, I felt like I have a right to be on this earth.
Here, you can do whatever you want to do.
I love my life here.
I feel at home.
I'm free to do what I want.
Freedom to me means my life.
How you doing?
Hi.
Hi.
Have a nice day.
You too.
Thanks.
If only child abuse were this easy to recognize. If you even suspect abuse, call 1-800-4-A-CHILD. All calls are anonymous and confidential. Trust your instincts.
Poor nutrition today will increase Sarah's chances of anemia, add to her healthcare costs, sick days, even stunt her ability to learn. And the thing is, Sarah's not even born yet. Get proper nutrition before it's too late. Call or visit WIC. WIC provides nutrition information, healthcare referrals, even food. Your child has you, and you have WIC.
Hi, and welcome back to the second half of Eye on Oshkosh. Tony and I have played a little musical chairs here, and we are very pleased to be joined in this half hour by Winnebago County Board Chairman David Albrecht. We are very happy to have you here. This is the first for you appearing on Eye on Oshkosh.
Right.
So welcome. Thanks for taking time out of your St. Patrick's Day to come and appear here. What we want to talk with Mr. Albrecht about is there are two referenda questions that are coming up on the April 5th ballot, and the more I've talked to people, most people have not known that there's any questions coming up whatsoever. These are both being put on the ballot by the Winnebago County Board. Now, as I understand it, one of the questions calls for the state to pick up all the costs for human services in the state, and the other is to have the state of Wisconsin pick up all the costs for the courts and judicial system in the state. Is that kind of a fair assessment of
Those
what they
are
are?
mandated programs, and we feel as though they should be responsible for paying their full share of it.
Okay.
Why don't we start with the first
Yeah.
one? The first
Yeah.
referendum question, I think I have the exact language. It would be, should the state of Wisconsin, not the property taxpayer, pay for the cost of the state mandated court system in Winnebago County? Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay, now why are we doing this?
Okay, could I read to you how we got to this point?
Yes, please do.
Counties across Wisconsin have taken decisive action to empower the voters of this state to speak directly to our state elected officials regarding on how two major programs should be funded. 69 of the 72 counties in Wisconsin will have two referendums questions on the April ballot, which will ask if the court system and the human services should be funded with state revenues rather than forcing the cost on property tax with a yes or no vote referendum. Questions that will be on the April ballot in the 69 counties. The WACA Board of Directors developed these questions and encouraged each county to place them on their April ballot. The response by county boards across the state has been tremendous. Choosing the courts and human services as the two large mandates to be addressed by the citizens of Wisconsin was done after significant study and research. As many of you remember, Governor Thompson appointed the Blue Ribbon Commission on State and Local Partnership for the 21st Century, more commonly referred to as the Kettle Commission, as it was chaired by the University of Wisconsin professor Don Kettle. This commission was comprised of 32 members, including 5 legislators, 3 cabinet secretaries, and representatives of local government, the business community, and taxpayer groups. In the final report, issued in January of 2001, Professor Kettle stated, over the last 9 months, the Commission has held 15 meetings, 7 town meetings throughout the state, countless discussions with citizens and government officials, and electronic forums on the internet. It has carefully examined the principal issue in the state and local partnership. In the pages that follow, the Commission lays out its recommendations for how best to structure the 21st century state and local partnership. On page 50 of the Commissioner's report, the recommendation is Both human services and state justice service programs should be state responsibilities. Statewide functions should not be funded by the property tax. Hence, as a general principle, Wisconsin ought to move as soon as possible to state funding of these functions. Our state elected officials have not yet acted upon the recommendations of this Blue Ribbon Commission, appointed by the governor. Perhaps if the voters of the state indicated their desire to do exactly that, this commission has recommended, it will compel our state elected officials to act. As of the writing of this article, the legislature is on the floor debating Assembly Bill 51, which freezes property taxes at a 2004 level, except for new growth. Nowhere in the proposal is in the governor's property tax freeze proposal is the issue of perpetuous shift of costs for courts and human services onto the property tax addressed, ignoring the fact that in 1987 the state of Wisconsin provided counties with approximately $187 million in community aids and reimbursement programs to counties administering human services programs on behalf of the state. And the counties had contributed an additional $75 million.
I think we could probably stop you there. I think we got the idea, Dave.
Okay.
But let's assume, and I think this is going to happen, that these referenda questions pass with 90% of the voters saying yes, it should be the state function. As a practical matter, don't you think the state legislature is just going to ignore that?
But I think it'll send them the message that this is something that they have to change. I mean, that it's going to send them a message that they have things to do also, and that they're irresponsible with the budget the way they're working with it.
But what may end up happening, and I'm just making an assumption here, but it seems to be a common sense assumption, if, say, the legislature listens to the message, they actually hear it, they may find a way to just raise taxes across the board, some type of state tax in order to fund the programs. So the taxpayer is really still going to end up paying for this, wouldn't you think?
Well, I think that they have to get their house in order and operate it like a business, or our local governments have to also, and be able to fund it.
What? Let's talk about the human services one first. What is that actually costing the taxpayers in Winnebago County right now?
Our total tax levy for the human services is approximately $54.5 million.
Okay.
And $17 million of that is mandated.
Okay. All right. And what about the
courts is
the
approximately $1.5 million.
Wow.
And these are per year figures.
Right.
Okay.
But every year they take away. I mean, every year it's less and less. Like maybe our juvenile justice that this social services takes care of. Every year they give us less and less dollars to operate it. For like, we maybe spend just around $1 million or a little bit under sending children to boys' school at Lincoln School, you know. And every year, I mean, it's all mandated how we do that, but every year they give us less and less money to do this.
Right.
Now, how long have you been on the county board, Dave?
I've been on there approximately 18 years.
18 years, and so this has gotten worse over 18 years. What's your opinion as to why this has happened? I mean, why has the state legislature, in your judgment, kept throwing more mandates out at the counties without funding them?
Well, I don't think, I think that they set up programs and they fund part of it. I think they start too many programs and spend too much money.
Okay, and so you've seen that as a pattern.
Yes.
Over 18 years. What do you expect to happen with these referendum questions? I mean, do you expect?
Well, it's a non-binding referendum.
Right.
But it's just to send a message also to them, to let them know that, hey, we're sick of this. And 69 of the 72 counties have joined have gotten on board to do this.
Didn't we do the same thing a few years ago with the campaign finance reform referendum advisory question?
I don't remember exactly how that went.
Yeah, it passed by huge numbers. It basically said, should we have a campaign finance system that has some public financing and so on and so forth, and it passed. And then, of course, I don't think the legislature got the message because they still refused.
But I think just recently I read something where they're coming back with that.
The state Senate, we're taping on the 17th. On the 16th, they voted down Mike Ellis's bill. So that once again, they have defeated it, at least for now. Cheryl?
So obviously, I mean, like I said in the outset, there's an awful lot of people. The majority of people that are out there, I mean, even just prior to this, we taped a show with mayoral candidate Bill Castle. He wasn't even aware that there were questions coming up on the ballot. So I think it's safe to assume that there's an awful lot of people out there who don't know that these things are coming up.
Right, and that's why we're trying to do this now to help
Other than this show, what
some
kinds
people.
of things are you doing to get the message out?
I believe there's ads. There's been ads in there's been different editorials in the newspapers. There's been all newspapers. I have maybe 30 different newspapers throughout the state, articles where it's been articles have been written on it and different editorials. And
were there any members of the county board who didn't support this? I mean, I can't imagine that there wouldn't be, that there would be, but okay, all right.
People can go to the Winnebago County website for more information? Is there information
I don't
about
believe
this on
there's
there?
any information on the website.
Okay, and then were you reading from the...
This was information that I had received from the Counties Association.
Okay. And by the way, I've been to the Wisconsin Counties Association, right? I think their website is www.wicounties.org. So anybody who wants more information can go to that site and find out, actually, not just about this, but about lots going on in county.
They have it all. They do a very good job.
Yes.
They have it all pretty well covered. I mean, somebody in that office knows exactly what's going on.
Dave, on a slightly different topic, again, you've been on there for 18 years. Why do you think out of all the units of government, county government seems to be the one that people know less about?
Well, that's what they're trying to do with different things, is get the word out on county government. Like the last couple of years, they had advertisements on the radio about county government and what it does and different things like that. I think people just take it for granted that everything happens and nobody's aware.
Yeah, it's been like a secret over. But has it just been a lack of public relations on the part of county chairs and county executives, or?
Oh, I don't know. I know our former chair was on this program different times, and he was on many different programs, and I just think that unless it's a personal issue, that if, like, we're the city, where you have a lot of people with eye on Oshkosh, like I was watching your program here now, that directs you closely, they don't get in, nobody gets involved. But if it's something that's going to address you, like we had a zoning issue with some trucking company out north of Oshkosh. I mean, the whole boardroom was filled up because it affected everybody right there. So there aren't that many things that they take notice of that's going to affect them. I mean, they just take it for granted that that's all going to come.
Good point.
What, some other issues here, you know, the size of the county board has been bandied about for quite some time. You know, is it too large? Is it just the right size? Should we make it smaller, and if so, by how much? What's Dave Albrecht's personal opinion on the size of the county board, and why?
Well, Joe and I were, Mr. Mail and I were all set last time. We had several districts that the people were sick for on and off for a long period of time, and we probably had 4 districts where we could have lowered it, but for some reason we never followed through with it. But it could have been lowered, probably those 4 districts, and went on and never missed a beat because there was no representation for an awful long time in a lot of those districts. And is it cumbersome? Sometimes, but basically we all get along pretty good, and we, you know, it's there's all different walks of life expressing their views on how things should be done. And
what was the size 18 years ago when you first got on the board?
I believe it was 45.
Okay, so we have downsized.
45 or 48? Yes, we have.
Okay, and but would you like to see it smaller?
I guess it wouldn't bother me one way or the other. I mean, it.
Why don't you explain to people what the board chair does? Isn't it true that in some counties they don't have a county executive?
Right.
I think only maybe 7, 8 counties have an executive. So in those counties that don't have the executive, does the board chair?
The board chair does the executive's work.
All right, and is
but some of them also have an administrator.
Okay.
But not all of them. I mean, it's the county board chair in some counties does it, and then some other counties they have a county board chair with an administrator.
So in our system, we obviously have a county executive. In our system, what is your role as the chair? We know that you run the meetings, but beyond that, what do you do?
Well, you have to fill in for all meetings where there's somebody missing or something's done like that. You have to keep the, like you say, run the meetings. Like now we just lost 2 seats. I have to go out and find 2 people to
Through
appoint people to
resignation?
replace. One was a resignation because he moved out of the area. The other one was a sudden death. So there's 2 openings now, one in Neenah and one up by Menasha and Appleton. That's part of Menasha and part of Appleton. So we have to replace those 2 people and interview people for it and go through their per diems and their pay and check the, kind of like doing a payroll for 38 people and trying to keep everybody on board. And
So as far as
who were those 2?
yeah,
one was Bob Klitsky and the other one was, can't come up with his name right now. Bob Klitsky was from Neenah. And
Was he the one who retired then?
the other guy, the other one was a new kid this time. Was Bob retired? No, Bob had passed away just about 2 weeks ago.
oh, so very sorry to hear that. Our condolences go out to his family. But you will take
replace-
applicants.
Like today I went down first thing this morning and went in the clerk's office and picked up my mail and went and looked, and there were several applicants already for a couple of the positions, and so then we'll interview for those positions. Like we just replaced Frank Tower on, was put on the board.
Right. Right.
And he replaced, I believe it was Mark,
Yeah, I can't remember. Why doesn't the county board have special elections? I know the statutes obviously allow for the appointment process, but wouldn't it be better to have special elections?
oh, I mean, that's such a short period of time to hold a special election for 10 months, sometimes a year, you know what I mean? I think it's too short a time to, if it was a 4-year position, then I could see you doing that.
Sure.
Kind of following up on one of Tony's questions from earlier, Dave. You know, county executive, whether or not there should be one, county chair sometimes taking the place of the county executive. In 18 years of service on the county board and dealing with other counties, I'm sure that you've seen how these different structures within county government work. Do you have an opinion as to which works better, which is more effective?
Well, they all have their own place. I mean, for years now, they've all, like we've had an executive for quite a few years, so it's all been functioning around that, and they take care of the administrative part, and the other ones that have just the chair, I mean, they all function well. A lot of them, a lot of them like that county board chair, and then they hire an administrator, and those go over very good. They all work.
Now, what's the difference then between an administrator of the county board or of the county and a county executive?
The county executive is elected, and an administrator you hire, kind of like.
I mean, as far as their job function, they essentially do the same thing, right?
Right.
Okay.
And you would set what their job should be also. I mean, maybe the chairman in some counties takes on more of a responsibility than what that administrator does. That changes with each county.
Okay.
I think it must have been 10 years ago now, there was a commission put together to reform county government. I know you know what I'm talking about. It had members of the community and, you know, maybe some elected officials. And my understanding is that none of their recommendations were really acted on. Did you know the report I'm talking about, did you at the time or even now, do you support those reforms?
Well, I would have to see the slip to go over it again to see some things maybe and some things probably not again.
But is there one?
Like one thing, an example, they wanted to create an airport, kind of set it up like our landfill, where that's set up by that board and that board completely runs it. Technically, that board doesn't have to tell you anything. And they wanted to create this with our airport. They wanted to have that type of system run our airport. And I was against that because of the fact that the local people, nobody has anything to say what goes on. 5 or 6 people will make the decision what happens with that airport.
And you were chair of the aviation committee,
I was chair of the aviation committee.
Okay, for quite a while, right?
Yes.
Okay, so lots of people think there hasn't been enough activity at that airport over the years.
Right.
What's your view on?
Well, I think that we have one of the finest airports in the country, and I think that there's plenty going on there all the time. It's with the EAA alone for what that does, and there's stuff going on all the time. You go out by the fixed base operators there, and you see 2-3 jets fly in from someplace. Somebody's always asking me, "Hey, what were those 2 private jets doing in there?" Well, they probably were here to visit Oshkosh Truck, or they were here to visit Bemis. I mean, that's all part of what the airport is for.
So there's more going on there than people think.
There's more going on there than people think.
Yeah, Cheryl?
One of the things we almost have to talk about on this show is Parkview. That's been in the news a lot lately. And our local paper, the Oshkosh Northwestern, has really beaten you guys up very badly over this thing. In a nutshell, what it comes down to is the county was looking to get $2 million and in exchange for cutting about 50 beds, I believe, from Parkview. The beds were cut, and we didn't get the $2 million. And Stu Rickman from the Northwestern said in his March 13th column, "It cost $2 million, but we finally know what's wrong with Winnebago County government. The problem is simply there is no one in charge and little leadership." How would you respond to that?
Well, the $2 million, when we voted on the $2 million for downsizing the bed, the chairman of that committee, when he brought the resolution to the floor, thought he maybe shouldn't even bring it to the floor because we weren't going to get the $2 million anymore, from what I can recall. So then, but we still continued on and voted on it, hoping that we could come in along the line someplace and get the money. Had we had the opportunity to get the money before, I can't say that. I called different legislators and the Human Services Department in Madison, and can I read you what they told me?
Sure.
I just thought that I might be asked that, so I brought it. I'd like to review with you the general situation with regarding the nursing home phase-down agreements. As you are well aware, the Medicaid budget is under serious pressure both in the current fiscal year and the next biennium, and all necessary funding for the current biennium has not yet been approved, although it seems likely it will be. Throughout this biennium, we have been doing everything we can to control Medicare expenditures and have re-examining virtually every aspect of how the program is operated. One of the things we have examined more closely recently is how nursing homes phase-down agreements have been approved. Accordingly, we are being very cautious about any new long-term phase-down agreements and allocating funds strictly for facilities in extreme financial distress. We are setting up a much more rigorous review and approval procedure. We assure that the funds available are allocated only in this manner. The funds that are projected to be available are being prioritized by nursing homes facing bankruptcy or receivership in order to protect the safety and well-being of residents and to assure orderly transfer of residents during an actual closing. At this time, we do not have any approval budget for state fiscal year 2006 and 2007, the period during which virtually any payment to Parkview would be made. The governor's proposed budget reduces payments for nursing homes phase down agreements consistent with overall pressures from Medicaid and states funding. We notified Parkview that we are changing our approach to these agreements as soon as we had made the decision before the county board acted. So they're telling us that they notified us before, and we were aware of that. But had there been an agreement there before that we could have, I don't know of that.
Now, who is that from?
This is from Mark Moody, the Administrator Division of Health and Care. But he goes on to say that it appears that the board has appeared to have decided to reduce the number of beds with full knowledge that our position had changed and that the funds would not be available. I hope this clarifies the situation. I'd be happy to discuss it with you further. But yes, we did know that we maybe wouldn't get it. But had there been a cutoff date behind that I'm not aware of.
What was the date on that, Dave?
When I just asked, this was sent to me February 28th. I had called and asked some of our legislators what happened and where did it happen, and then I suppose they asked them, and it came back through me through those channels. But I also had asked if we had information pertaining to that, but I hadn't received anything on that yet.
Well, Margie Rankin, the administrator out of Parkview, and Chuck Orenstein, the finance director for the county, just this last week, as we're taping this, they responded to the March 3rd Oshkosh Northwestern editorial that was something separate from Stu Rickman's column, and they said, too, that in September of 2004, they were still somewhat under the impression that the county was eligible for the funds and that there had not been a cutoff date. So,
see, probably had we acted on it at September, maybe something would have come back, but we didn't act upon it. I remember sitting in on a meeting out there just before we brought that one of the resolution for downsizing to the board, that they had thought that we maybe wouldn't get it. But somewhere along the line there maybe was a cutoff point, but I'm not aware of that.
Why did it take so long for the board to act on it?
I'm not aware of that. I mean, I don't know, other than from when the questions just all.
Well, that 11th hour proposal for the old Mercy building didn't help matters, did it?
I don't think that had anything to do with it.
But that did delay it almost another month, didn't it?
But that still wouldn't have been any. That still wouldn't have come into effect here with that.
Okay.
What? Did you have something else? We're
No,
down to a couple of minutes here. And
do you want to give people, maybe, Dave, just one more reason why they should vote on those referendum questions? I take it you think it's important that people vote yes on those questions.
I think you should vote yes on the referendum. Should the state of Wisconsin pay the full funding for human services, and should the state of Wisconsin pay the full funding for the mandated Wisconsin court system, because it'll save you money on your tax dollars, and I would hope that you vote yes.
And it will send a strong message to our representatives in Madison.
Right.
Okay. Well, I hope that, you've enjoyed this half hour. It is, like I said, the first time that you've ever been here, and being the county board chairman, certainly would love to have you back in the future.
Sure.
And not just at election time. So thanks again for being here.
Okay,
and thanks to all of you for joining us on this edition of Eye on Oshkosh. Tony, thank you, as always. Sure. And we do hope that you'll go to the polls on Tuesday, April 5th. It's your constitutional right. It's a constitutional privilege. And it's your responsibility as a citizen to go to the polls. There's all kinds of elections that you're going to be voting in: county board, or county executive rather, a Winnebago County Circuit Court judge, city council, school board, mayor for the city of Oshkosh. Just a ton of things to vote for. And again, it's your responsibility. So go to the polls on Tuesday, April 5th. For Tony Palmeri and Dave Albrecht, I'm Cheryl Hentz. Thanks again for joining us. We'll see you next time. Until then, take good care and keep your eye on us. We've got our eye on Oshkosh.